Hello and welcome to a very special one-off return of Technology in the Arts. My name is Brian Kelley.
And I'm John LeMasney.
And we are together again for the first time in nearly 8 years to explore the connections between technology and art. But first, we need to do some serious catching up. John, it's very good to see you again. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Brian. It's so good to be able to talk with you again. Thank you for asking. How are you doing?
I am doing excellent. Thank you. Already. Going well.
That was read very, very well.
What have you been up to, John?
Well, I'm back in academia. Of course, you and I met at Rider University, where we both dug the tunnels of technology and web presence.
And got told something was too pink and we had to just throw it away.
We just needed to make it a little more jazzy.
Yeah,
that's all. If we had what's the guy's name? Mark J. Ryder?
Andrew J. Ryder.
Andrew J. Ryder. If we had a picture of Andrew J. Ryder with
jazz hands,
that would have been perfect.
Yeah.
Possibly for Westminster.
With cranberries.
Oh, right, because that's where he made his fortune.
Cranberry King.
So then after my time at Rider, of course, I went to Princeton, where I had a very short stint. It was, I think that I had reached my limits on academia at that time, and or maybe academia had reached its limits on me. So I went into consulting, and I ended up going into construction and learning about residential construction. Worked for Habitat for Humanity as a crew leader, and did a few jobs as a consultant here in Charlottesville. Worked at Field School, and but really was bouncing in a lot of different directions, doing remodeling and handyman work, and learning a lot about that. And eventually I got a job at PWG, PhotoWorks Group, where we haven't really talked about it, but they do installs, graphical installs for industry. So like we went to Nestle in Washington, D.C. and installed all of their paintings on the floor, and we had to put up graphics on the glass doors so that people would not walk through the glass doors. It's like a requirement, not OSHA, but it's a requirement for safety, so that people don't walk into these glass doors because everything is just glass. So you have these graphics to go across, and they're designed at PWG, and I ran the workshop and did all of this construction work and install work, and really, really loved it. But that came to an end, and being in Charlottesville, you're constantly it would be like being in Princeton and not really spending any time at the university, which many people do. You know, it's a city, beautiful city, but like the culture of the place is really inspired by the university. And the same is really true of Charlottesville. Charlottesville has a long history, but a big part of its history is Jefferson and UVA, the University of Virginia, where I decided I was going to try to get a job. And so I put in probably 30 resumes to various jobs that are available at UVA. And this one job, where I am doing support in transition from people who are in Gmail into Office 365, I'm helping them do that. So it's a very narrow focus in this job. It's very specialist oriented, which is weird because usually I'm very versatile. I'm trying to do a little bit of everything. But this position at UVA is unique in a lot of ways for me. First of all, has nothing to do with open source. It's really the opposite of open source.
Yeah.
And but I have to admit, there are some really great tools inside of Microsoft's Office 365, soon to be Microsoft 365 offerings. I would probably not pay for it myself in my personal life, but in a university, of course, any enterprise, if it's taken care of by the company, it makes for great collaborative tools. I'm just glad that I don't have to pay for it myself. And I like Google stuff, but
Yes.
I don't get to talk about it or use it at all at work. It's all Teams and OneDrive, and it's I'm doing it on Linux though, which is why I bring this up. Is that the job is also remote, despite the fact that I'm about 8 minutes from my office by car. I work remotely and really love the setup at home. And I have my nice ATX mic, and I have my beautiful, 1970s headphones. And a lot of people are working from home at UVA right now, still since COVID. And in ITS, the technology group that I work for, most everybody is working from home. Some people come in, and I probably go in about once a week. But generally speaking, you're working at your computer at home. They gave me a laptop, which I could use at any time. I just like the setup. But I just started in September, and progressively between September and now, there had been something going on with my Linux-based machine. I'm running Linux Mint, and it was driving me crazy. And it was embarrassing in some cases because, like for instance, my microphone sometimes didn't work on Zoom. And it's the sort of thing that you don't know whether it's Zoom, or you don't know whether it's because you're using the web-based version, or you don't know it's because it's Linux and they just don't pay as much attention to Linux-based connections as they do to other connections. And so I had worked and worked and worked and tried to find solutions for this, and got down to the point where somebody who was having my problems suggested recompiling the kernel, which is pretty serious business. It's, apparently people do it all the time, but I had never done it because I didn't want to jeopardize my system in that way. There was no reason to. But that's what I was facing. And then I found out that it was something in the BIOS. Like after months and months, I looked at some other message board and it said, go into your BIOS and turn off this setting. And I did. And since, things have been much better. Not perfect, but much better. So that's what's going on with me. Is I'm full in on Linux at home, despite the fact that I'm working full on Microsoft 365 back in academia after, let's see, 2013, 2014. So 8 years since I've been in academia, and it feels much longer. It feels a lot longer. Is that right? Am I doing the right math? 2014 to
I think so.
2022, yeah. So that's
Something
what's
like
going
that.
on with me, and I'm sure that we'll talk more about it. But enough about me. How about you? What have you been up to?
Well, as we were preparing for this reunion, I realized that
Preparing.
yes. Which I think I'm still doing as
You and me
going
both,
on.
brother. You and me both.
So anyway, I realized that my son is going to be 8, and my youngest son, I have two boys. Ben was born like a month and a half, 2 months about after our last. I'm not sure when our last episode was, but I think it was sometime in January of 2015. But so it's probably close to 2 months.
So what you're saying is fatherhood killed this podcast.
Well, no, because I mean, fatherhood killed my other podcast. We actually started up again after I became a father the first time, but yeah. So my son is just 2 months shy of being as old as the hiatus of the Technology and the Arts podcast. At least the second iteration of it, when we came back as a video show. Thanks to Google Hangouts.
Right.
R.I.P.
R.I.P. I'm pretty sad about it.
It was such an elegant solution for what we were doing.
It was effortless to do what we did, and I used it on several podcasts besides ours to manage all that. It was great.
So anyway, but the thing that I am up to mostly these days I actually in 2021 started actually distributing my music through streaming and via Bandcamp. Um, I turned 50 that year, and my plans to do an Ironman 70.3 triathlon were, dashed by the pandemic, and I decided I wanted to do something, and it actually
Sorry.
not that, but I wanted to do something to kind of mark that year, and I stop. And so I in early 2021 I started cleaning out my studio area in the basement. I mean, it was never really a studio; it was just where my keyboards were, but it got buried by junk. 11 years of junk,
What kind
and
of junk?
toys, boxes, just anything. So I cleared out that space, and I realized, hey, I could make a studio out of this area here. So that was like a project I had in early 2021. My friend Christian Beach, who was on this show many, 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 many years ago, um, asked me to record something here and send it to him for a single he was releasing. And so I was like, okay, that's a sign. That he asked me. He didn't know I was creating this studio space. So I'm like, I should just clean up my GarageBand demos and put them out there. I was working with him to put out new music in 2020 and 2021, and I had found DistroKid for him, which is a service that artists can use. It's $20 a month. Sorry, I keep saying that. $20 a year, and
It's a big difference.
yeah, you can release.
I mean, people are upset at Netflix for being $8.
Right. I mean, $20 a year, and you can release unlimited music. You don't have like the bells and whistles with like timed releases or some other features, but you could put out the music. You can get it to the streamers, all Spotify, Apple, Amazon, YouTube. There's all these odd ones that I can't think of right now. But yeah, so I was like, I'm just gonna do it. I'm just gonna market it as a DIY thing, and I'm not gonna market it as like polished stuff, but just put it out there. And so I did that. So I am recording, and let me see if I can do this. I am going to share the screen.
You're going to disappear.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, I'll be able to see you.
Yes, I know.
And everybody else will be able to see you.
And I can see me.
You'll disappear for yourself.
Because I am still in that box and not my screen.
We don't actually exist.
So yeah, I am recording under the name Ferocious Designs. It's from a lyric in a 1991 song released by Marillion, prog rock legends Marillion from the UK, called "Cover My Eyes," in parentheses, "Pain in Heaven," and it was always in the back of my mind if I was going to do a music project that was going to be the name for some reason. Even though I'm not really doing prog, some of it goes into that genre, but it's mostly pop and rock, but very electronic based. I have been adding some guitars, which is rather unfortunate for the listener because I cannot play guitar, but I'm creating sounds out of it. Oh, that's my latest single. So yeah, all my music is on ferociousdesigns.com, so you can go there if you want to find out more about me and my music projects. But John, I want to find out more about Google Guides.
Oh, well, I'm glad you asked, because I'm going to now share my screen. I'm going to tell you all about it. The reason that I'm bringing it up is because I've been doing it a lot. And what it is is, let me set it up for you. If you go to Maps, and let's say you do a search on barbecue, which is beautiful and delicious here in Charlottesville. Matter of fact, I just had some. Vision Barbecue. I really love Vision Barbecue. Here, when I visit it on Maps in my desktop version, you can see that I get information about Vision Barbecue, including 139 reviews that give it 4.8 stars, what kind of restaurant it is, what it focuses on. It gives me opportunities to use Google Maps in order to navigate to it, save it for, if I wanted to save it for later to visit or something like that. See what's around it, like if I was going instead to a meeting place or whatever, I could see what businesses were around it. I can send it to my phone, etc. And if you keep going down, you get more details about it. And then you get to photos. And you say, oh, there's photos of the place. Let me go in there and see what they got. Oh, that looks like the outside. That's great. Here's a plate of food to give you an example of what they would have on the menu. Wow, it looks great. Fresh baked goods, mac and cheese, all looks great. The reason that those photos are available is because of Google Local Guides. The owner, of course, can go and upload their own photos, but most of the photos that show up on Google Maps are Google Local Guides putting up those photos. Google Local Guides are also who leave reviews. And so, as I said, there's 139 reviews here. You can see that 42 people reviews mentioned brisket, 20 mentioned mac and cheese, right? So you get all these details that just automatically pulled out of the information, the data that's uploaded by people. Here's Charlotte, who has 65 reviews. She's a local guide, and she gave it 5 stars, talked about it, took some photos, and put it up. Got a response from the owner, which is always a little win when you say something nice about somebody and somebody emails you back and says, hey, thanks, and they do it publicly. It's a really nice community, I think. It's not always kind. You can see that the next person gives 2 stars and talks about, whatever, the size of their dish. So it's not biased in that way. If you don't like the place, you don't have to be positive about it. But if you wanted to contribute, you could go to Google Maps and then click on your contributions, and you'd log in with your Google account, which I am already logged in with. And that's where it will prompt you to leave reviews for places that it knows that you've been, because Google Maps, in my case, I leave on location tracking. So it knows all the places that I go to, and it gives me opportunities to give reviews about those places. And you can see here, I'm a local guide level 9 with 64,072 points. The points are not worth anything. The points are just a gamification of this system. And I really got excited when I would get photos, especially, that would get a lot of attention. For example, if we go to photos, I took this photo today while I was sitting outside of Wawa and just uploaded it to that Wawa's Google Maps placeholder, and gave it a 4-star review. Here is a place that I go from time to time where it's like a roadside market, which is very popular here in Charlottesville, in the entire state, as far as I can tell. Little gas stations with great fried food, great comfort food. I recently went to the Virginia Museum of Fine Arts, where they had a show about the guitar in American art. And I took as many photos as I could because I wanted to capture the experience for myself, but I also wanted to share on Google Maps to other people who might be interested in visiting the museum and not sure what they're going to run into. I go a little bit overboard. I usually do between 50 and 100 photos when I'm at a place that I really care about trying to capture. And sometimes I'll go back again and again and continue to take photos and upload them, because as time changes, the place changes, especially like antique stores. One of my favorite visits is a couple of antique stores in the area, because everything is always changing. So you get these new photos, put them up, and it's like Google Maps will tell you that there's new photos available for a particular place. You can see that there's numbers on top of my photos too. It says 72 here, 13 here, 7. Those are views. So this particular photo that I took of the house, a historic house that's outside of the museum, has 72 photos, or 59, and has 72. If you go down through the rest of the photos, sometimes it's just 1 or 2 or 7 or 8. And half the time, I think this is the censors who probably are rushing out to go look at the photos whenever you upload them, to make sure that there's no nudity or anything that would be problematic to share, copyrighted information maybe.
All right.
And so after all that, the one thing to note is that these 15 views per photo really add up. And if I sort instead by views, you can see that I have over 188 million views of my photos, which is by far, by a far stretch, my most popular viewed piece of anything I've ever done. Nobody, nowhere near that number of people has ever looked at a poem that I've written. Nobody, nowhere near that number of people has looked at a piece of art that I've made. But 7 million people look at that photo, which is, to me, just cool.
And it's crazy that your most popular photo is like the place I used to go shopping on Wednesday nights when Allison and I were living in our condo.
Right. So I'm trying to come back. There I am. I really appreciate you letting me talk about that, because Google Local Guides it's completely volunteer. Nobody is being paid. Every once in a while, they'll give you like a little perk, like a $25 gift certificate or something, but nothing based on effort, because I put forth a lot of effort to get to that level 9. It doesn't mean much. It's just the good feeling that you get that you participated in a system that helps people.
Excellent.
I'm curious, Brian, whatever happened to the song we worked on?
Yes. So, little backstory. When our Technology in the Arts podcast ended in 2015, that season we were working on a song together. The whole season was about collaborating on a song and discussing and exploring different ways we might be able to collaborate on that. And we never actually found something back then that would work for, because I was on Mac. I guess you were on Linux then as well.
Probably.
Or even Android, but we couldn't think of anything. We couldn't find anything that was online, worked together, that was free. And as it turned out, I just recently found that like a few months later, this thing called BandLab came online, and probably would have been perfect for what we were trying to do. But I don't even know what state it was in back then. But right now, it's actually a pretty nice online digital audio workstation. But anyway, so during that season, you shared some raw guitar riffs. I had a couple of song segments. The most complete was vocals and a very basic piano thing I played with a chorus. And the lyrics were inspired by the cases of police brutality that we saw in Ferguson, Missouri, because this was early 2015. It was in late 2014, so that was August 2014 when that all happened, and so that was on my mind. The protests that stem from the Michael Brown killing, so that was what the chorus was dealing with, and I picked out one of the riffs that you had given because I had for some reason I had an interesting rhythm to it, and and I thought it could work. So what happened was I took the riff, dropped it into GarageBand, kind of processed it a little bit. It was just like a 4-bar part of it, and then put some stuff around it, built it up a little bit, created a connector piece that blended perfectly into the chorus I'd written. And so I think I'd shared a mock-up of it, but it was just like the verse, the connector piece, and the chorus, and that's all it did. It didn't go anywhere. It didn't have any other lyrics other than the chorus lyrics, and it was going to be called "Lay It on the Line" because that was the main hook in the chorus. So when the podcast ended, the song just went unfinished. We got to that point, and that was it. And or to 2020, and it all started up again. I mean, it didn't just all start up again. Obviously, it was happening the whole time, but it kind of boiled up again with George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, the lack of police action in the Ahmaud Arbery murder, where they were just going to let those guys go, and I was like, I have to revisit the song. So I went back into the song and finished it up, created a bridge, built it up, wrote all the lyrics, and I think I shared it on the demo. I shared it on Facebook, and I'm pretty sure you heard it at that time.
Yeah.
But so
I've heard it several times. Actually.
Yeah, so that was 2020, and so when I decided to launch Ferocious Designs, I was going to put that. I put out an EP in July of 2021 called "A Matter of Time." That was my debut EP, and like that needs to go on there. And so it wasn't. I didn't have plans to put out like a single in advance. I was just going to kind of spotlight one of the songs when I put it out, but as I was getting things prepared, I realized that I saw that Bandcamp was having a Juneteenth fundraiser. So I was like, that's a song that could work with Juneteenth, because it was raising funds for social justice, equality causes.
Perfect fit.
So I put that out there, and I sent out a release to some local media in New Jersey, and I get an email back from Bob Macon, who is a writer here, a longtime writer, covers music, entertainment. And he says, "Oh, when you put out the EP, I'm going to make this my song of the week." And I was just like, "That's crazy! Like, this is the first thing I've ever released as an artist." And it's like, oh. It's like immediately accepted and acclaimed. Like I never thought my stuff was good enough to put out there in the world. And the first thing, it was kind of, I was like, okay, well, I can only go down from here, and maybe I have, but I'm trying to.
I will say to you what somebody said to me when I came home from a trip to find that my car had been missed by a fallen tree by like a foot. And I'd swear not less than 15 times that day did I hear, "Go play the lottery." So go play the lottery, Brian.
Yeah. So, so you can see that, right? Yeah. So that was the Making Waves song of the week in July 16th. That was the day I released my EP. There was a significance to that date, by the way. I was a huge fan of a South African activist and musician, Johnny Clegg, and he passed away a year earlier on that day, July 16th, 2020. So actually 2 years, 2019. So this is right up. And here's the best part. Like, you know how much of a Peter Gabriel fan. He writes, originally released as part of Bandcamp's Juneteenth social justice fundraiser, the Peter Gabriel-like anthemic call to arms. And I was like, wow, that's.
Well, given your love for Peter Gabriel, what a compliment.
So, so I used here's a video. I don't know if you'll be able to hear anything, but It's probably muted, maybe. No,
It's just
not. It's just buffering.
I think you need to when you
Oh,
upload
here it
this
goes.
to YouTube, you have to.
Can you hear it? No, can't hear it.
No.
It doesn't get the screen. Okay. All
You
right. So it
probably
doesn't.
need to set
Yeah,
6
put a
permissions in Mac OS.
I probably have to put the. It's because it's probably not. It's not screen recording the audio, so I'd have to get a mixer and put a line in, and yeah, I'm not doing that.
Well,
So
we didn't think to test this.
well, I didn't really think it would work. I just wanted to see.
And speaking of
It's
workflow,
it's live testing. Well, we're not there yet. I just wanted to say though, this isn't just my song though. It's you are credited as a co-writer on this. It's not here, but in all the press materials and
I
the
was
stuff
I was
submitted-
looking actually. I was looking to see my name mentioned and realized I'm not mentioned in here.
He didn't put. Hold on. I will show you though. I will show you.
No,
Uh,
not now.
okay, but it is in there. It was in the press release. You are mentioned in the press release. The
Brian,
origin.
I'm amazed that you include me in anything about the song. It really was truly completely your work. It's very kind of you to say and mention the origin, but it's definitely it's your piece, and you should be very proud of your accomplishment for sure.
Okay, but you were mentioned there. So so you had a part. I may have been the song of the week, but you were a part of that. So
I was a glint in the eye of the song of the week, which is all I really ever aspired to be.
So right now though, I am working on my first full length album. I put out actually a number of singles this year that are going to be on the album, but there's a bunch of new things. It's going to be like half new, half reworked stuff. But all the new stuff. Only one new. That's not true. I put out one song was officially released. That's new. And another one was a demo version that I gave to a charity compilation. So it's not in a finished form, but it's out there, but it's not available unless you buy this on Bandcamp. But anyway, so yeah, I'm working on my first full length album, and it has been a bear trying to keep things organized and flowing. So I was curious as to what solutions are you using for workflow and project management?
Well, it's funny you should ask. When I told you about this transition from academia to consulting to construction, back to academia. At the time when I was doing construction, I really wasn't at my computer very much unless I was just having fun, right? If I was whatever, looking at YouTube, which is fine. But it really removed me from the environment that I had been in every other segment of my work life, which was in front of a computer, where I would hold on to ideas in the form of documents or notes or whatever. And in fact, one of the things that I've always focused on was notepad applications, especially Keep. I really like Keep by Google, and I'll show that to you by sharing my screen. And so this is my Keep. I apologize in advance if there's anything that is bawdy, but I don't imagine we're going to run into anything that's too racy. But anyway, this is my Keep, and Keep is just a selection, sort of Pinterest style, a layout of notes. And so, for example, if I go into this first note, which happens to be one of my pinned notes, this is my ongoing list. And if you're familiar with Getting Things Done by David Allen, which is a productivity method where you write down everything that you want to do and put it into a format where you can easily either rip it up or check it off or move it to another section. And so the ability in Keep, for example, to move a note up or down is pretty great. Also, the ability to check a box. And in my case, the check boxes all go down to the bottom of this note. Matter of fact, most of my notes are set up that way. I don't want to lose the information. I want to know what I've accomplished.
Mm-hmm.
So at the end of the year, or the end of a month, or the end of a week, I can go in here and just look at things that I have taken care of, which opens up opportunities for new things to be done. So whether it be if I want to put a piece of art on a new table, I have to make the new table first. And so it's that kind of order where you have an order of things in order to get all the way through a project. It's just really useful. It's also useful for things like grocery lists, like here's my groceries, and what's nice is all the completed items are things that I want to put into my cart. And so I don't have to think too hard when I'm doing my groceries, because I just come in here and say, yeah, I'd like some rice, or, oh yeah, I'm out of canned chicken, or whatever the case might be. Nothing here is going to surprise me where I'm like, why? I wouldn't even want to consider that, or whatever. But whenever I have an idea, this is usually where it goes. And with that in mind, I decided that I'm going to do this review of citation, note-taking, mind map, and timeline apps that happen to work on Linux. And Keep is in column B here. And I ask questions like, is it an online, a desktop, or an app for your phone? And I say that Keep is online, but there is also an app. Platforms that's available on browser app, richness of formatting. It doesn't have, what I mean by that is if I go back into Keep, this is what you get. You don't get to choose a font. You don't get to choose whether it's bold. You don't get to really do a lot. You can color the background of the note. You can add images to it. You can archive it. You can set reminders, which is kind of nice. And you can also set collaborators. So I think I mentioned to you in one of our tests that this would be a great way to have the rundown, because once a section was done, you would just check it off. And then when you go to do your next episode, you would just go back in, uncheck it, and edit it for that episode, or whatever the case would be,
Right.
So I think it's an incredibly useful tool, but it doesn't have a lot of formatting capabilities. And so if I wanted something with formatting capabilities as far as Keep is concerned, I would want to use something instead like OneNote. There's a perfect example of a tool that I wish I had the use of personally, because it really solves most of my needs. OneNote is a great application, but I don't have Microsoft installed at home. I can use UVA's OneNote in order to do that kind of work, but that's really mixing church and state for me, right? I don't want to start doing my personal stuff and stuff that if it went away, I would cry, right?
Right.
So there's also Joplin, Evernote, Cherry Tree, Lithograph, Minder. Some things are much better at visual display, like Minder and Lithograph. Well, Minder in particular is a mind map application that happens to be open source, available for the desktop. And Lithograph is this really specialized open source Linux application that is date-based. And so if you wanted to do a timeline, it's like the perfect way to do a timeline, to say on this day at this time, this happened, and then be able to browse through years of data in that way. I just find incredibly, really great. So I'm not even sure what I'm going to do with this once I'm done with it, but I figured that we would talk about it because it's what's going on.
Okay.
And speaking of workflow, I hear you have a project you are working on.
Yes, I'm still seeing your screen though.
Yeah, that I meant that as a little parting joke from my segment. I'm coming back. Hold on. There.
Yeah, it's kind of stalled a little bit. Not really my fault, but yeah. So I'm working on this project. I've been talking a lot about my existence as a musician now. And one of the places I am getting a lot of support is it's a New Jersey-based internet radio station that focuses primarily on New Jersey artists, but it plays others as well. But and it's blowupradio.com. And I'll just share my screen a little bit for there we go. The website's kind of this is a DIY operation. It's coming.
I'm not seeing. Oh, okay.
It's coming in. So, but very supportive. Anytime I put out a single, it usually winds up on the New Jersey Music Show Monday nights. But as you can see here, join us on Mastodon, follow us on Mastodon. So with Twitter, kind of whatever was going on with Twitter right now, and probably a lot of us just feel like it's for the best to get away. So a lot of us have gone to Mastodon, which for the unfamiliar, it's a open source, decentralized, federated Twitter alternative, microblogging platform. There's a bunch of similar federated apps, PixelFed, which is Instagram alternative. There's Friendica, which is a Facebook alternative. There's PeerTube, which is a YouTube alternative. All open source, all in the Fediverse. They're all these federated apps. They use ActivityPub to interoperate with each other. So you can be on Mastodon and follow somebody on PixelFed and vice versa. So you don't have to have a Mastodon account. You could be on PixelFed and still follow that, person on and so getting back to Mastodon. So he does Laszlo, you can see Laszlo here. He's the one who runs this station. He does this event every year, banding together. It raises money and awareness for the Spondylitis Association of America. His wife is afflicted with the disease, the ailment, and it's just a way of giving back for his support over the years. He gets like 30, 40 of us to contribute a track to a compilation that people can get for like a $10 minimum donation. And he devotes a whole weekend to live sets, whether they're truly live via Skype or we can pre-record them and send them to him, which is what I do, because I am not doing a live set. I've tried that on my own. I can play live with Christian, in his backing band. That's one thing. But when I am front and center, it is not happening. It is bad. It is bad. So, but a lot of the promotion for that is done through Twitter. I mean, he does things with email and outreach to us, but as far as public facing, it's through Twitter. That's all he's on. He's not on Facebook. He's not on any other social media, at least until this whole thing happened with Twitter. And we can get off this now. I'll stop sharing it and talk. So
I'm just glad you weren't like going up and down as you were talking.
Yeah.
Bad.
Yeah. So as we're all leaving Twitter and going to Mastodon, he went on there, I went on there around the same time, and I just kept on thinking about how it's going to be sad if we ever lose that Twitter community we had for this banding together benefit. And I sent him an email. I'm like, why don't we? I'll help you with this, but why don't we like set up some kind of page that could be a resource for artists, New Jersey artists specifically, to make the jump over to Mastodon. I did some research. I found some stories, articles, videos to try to make things easier. Oh, jeez. So and also have a directory. We were trying to figure out ways to get the word out about that. So it was like a project, but then he had a family emergency. I've had a little bit of a family thing come up, so it's kind of on hold. But yeah, it's a project that we're trying to build this new Mastodon community of New Jersey artists, and I think it's important because I think the Fediverse is where it's at. I know I'm late to this, and all these, and it has actually been really welcoming at Mastodon. Like my first couple posts there, people were like, oh, that's cool. It was just something I shared, and it was like, oh, that's cool. That's welcoming. And meanwhile, I went to another alternative recently, post news. My first post, I was like, first of all, it looks unfinished. It looks like an off-brand Tumblr to me, and that's not disparaging Tumblr because I'm actually excited about Tumblr right now. But my first post was like, oh, just getting acclimated here. It's kind of weird. And somebody responded like, well, maybe it's weird because you need to share something more interesting. And it's like, what? Like, you're gonna blame me for this thing being crap? It's like, it's not my fault. It was just very odd. It's very snobby over there. But journalists are like gravitating towards it, and there's a lot of red flags that everybody's kind of ignoring. But anyway, so I'm excited about the Fediverse and getting this community together, and especially now if Tumblr carries through with plans to join the Fediverse by adding ActivityPub and becoming more Twitter-like, I think it's just going to open up a huge audience, and that's
And incidentally, in a recent conversation that we had, of course, Matt Mullenweg, who is at Automatic, who founded Automatic and runs WordPress, is also in charge of they bought Tumblr. Automatic did.
Yes, and he's the one who's been recruiting ex-Twitter employees, and there's plenty of those now. So
he's a brilliant guy. Matt is.
Yeah. So I mean, for all the people who are seeing the problems of joining Mastodon, because it's decentralized. You don't go to mastodon.com to join. There's a joinmastodon.org, which then presents you with a list of servers that are available for you to join. But some of those are topic specific, geographic, geo specific. So they're and since they're getting so many people, and such a rush that they didn't really expect, a lot of the open, general interest servers are not available to join right now. So it's a little tough. So if Tumblr does add ActivityPub and connects to the Fediverse, that would mean that you could go to Tumblr, set up an account, or or go back to the one that you had that you forgot about, and you can communicate. You can follow people who have made the jump to Mastodon or PixelFed, any of the federated apps. Oh, I just shook my whole desk here. You can follow anybody on those federated apps through Tumblr if this goes through. So and Flickr is also talking about doing it too. I'm not sure that really excites me, but yeah, it's an important project to me to get our music community together again in some kind of social way, without the assurance that Twitter is going to be around. And like I said, a lot of us are trying to get away from it, regardless if it's still there. So,
Yeah, try to make this segue
Yeah.
there.
So, but that's what I'm excited about. So,
Okay.
What are you excited about, John?
Well, thanks for asking. What I'm excited about right now is walking. I've been, ever since I got this job at UVA, I decided that if I was going to be sitting in front of my computer a lot more often, that I needed to get back into an exercise regimen, as opposed to in construction, you're moving a lot and you're out in the elements and you're lifting things and standing for hours, and you get plenty of exercise if you're doing construction, but not so in computer work, in case you don't know, or editing, or any of the things that you do that require a chair. And so I decided that I was going to get back into my Fitbit regimen, and along the way, I got excited about nature, and I got excited excited again about nature and about astronomy and about naturalism, understanding botany, understanding life science. Not to say that there wasn't a lot of fun in construction, but I would prefer to walk. I'd prefer to walk the trail. And so it's really nice to be able to have the joy of working and collaborating with people on a screen, as we are now, and then to be and have that be your living, and then go out and choose where and how you spend your leisure time in gaining some exercise. So that's all to say that I'm sure that I've talked about Fitbit a lot in the past. I still love my Fitbit. I have my Versa 3, I think it is, watch. And this is probably my 5th model of Fitbit that I've had. And I really love the sleep information it gives, and the step information it gives. It tells me how many calories I'm burning, it tells me everything. But it has, and the point at which I'll share my screen. It has a pretty limited interface as far as tracking for your trails. So this is a recent walk that I did. I did not know where I was. I was sort of, I knew that there was a trail, but I didn't necessarily know where I was going. I wasn't familiar with it. And it came in very handy because I got down to this point of the trail, and this is a pretty rustic trail. There's no paved roads. There's no,
Right.
It's just a spot in the woods. And I got turned around where I was supposed to, I go to the end of my walk and turn around and started to come back. And instead of going back to my origin, I ended up going the wrong way and traveled down to this lake, this huge lake that was right there. And I'm so glad that I tracked the walk, because now I know how to get back to the lake. And the funny part about it is I knew about the lake and was sort of looking for the lake. But when you're on the ground, you can't necessarily, if you don't know the trail, you don't know which way it goes.
Right.
And I saw somebody on the trail. They were walking along with their kid. And I said, "Is the lake down this way?" And they said, "I've never seen a lake anywhere near here." And I was like, "Well, I saw it on a map. I know it's around here somewhere, but I'm just not sure where." And he's like, "Good luck." So I found it by mistake. And but the thing about it is, Fitbit is a pretty lonely place. As like, you can have friends, but it's not really focused on trails. It's not an application about trails. The ability to record your exercise is sort of a side effect of their main business, which is health tracking, right?
Right.
So I've been spending all this time on trails in Virginia. There's all kinds of beautiful places that you can go. And if you don't track it, it just gives you your heart rate. And as a matter of fact, if you go further back, despite the fact that a lot of these have GPS maps, you don't see them here. So it's not great. I don't like that about Fitbit. However, I don't know if you are familiar with AllTrails, but it's a very popular trail tracking app. Have you ever used it?
Yeah, I have, yes.
So what I really love about it is it's focused on what I want, which is visiting trails, getting data about elevation, knowing how high, I went on a mountainside or something like that. It also shows you, it's really focused as opposed to Google Maps where you have to turn on like bike trails. It's really focused on trails of all kinds, and it doesn't matter that I did not walk these trails. They're still showing, available for me to go and visit later. It's just a good place for information. But by far, the most important thing that I found about this was you get the ability to upload photos while you were on the trail. So as soon as you finish tracking your hike, it says, we noticed you took some photos. Why don't you upload those to this trail item? And you can see here, I've been doing long exposures where, like, if a car goes by, it's like a trail,
right,
which is kind of cool. So I just like that not only do you get to really focus on the trail, but you get elevation information. You can share this information with other people, give it a funny title. So that's that.
I'm sorry. I was trying to find. I know I've used AllTrails before, but I don't know if I have it on my phone anymore. But have you ever used? And hold on, I have to open it because I don't remember what it's. Avenza Maps.
Yeah, Avenza is for offline PDF
right,
trail.
That also helps not to get you lost.
Yeah, for sure. Well, like I said, I was so
That's why I
happy
was
that
trying to find it.
I was so happy that I had that tracking going because I was able to see where I had made my mistake and get back on track because it was getting dark. Before I tell you about astronomy that I've been kind of excited about lately, I just wanted to touch on, because you were talking about a DAW, Ardor, which is shown on my screen right now, is an open source digital audio workstation.
Oh,
it's
okay,
pretty great and sophisticated. It's available for Linux, Mac OS, and Windows. And we could have easily used this, not in a real-time collaborative way, but certainly we could have traded files back and forth. And if we ever decide to do a song, this is probably one of the ways that we should consider it. But I do like Bandcamp, not Bandcamp. What is the name of that?
Bandlab.
Right. So the only other thing that I wanted to say about, sorry, I'm just trying to get back to, I don't know why it turns off my camera every time I share my screen. It doesn't do that to you.
Oh, it doesn't? Oh, okay, weird.
Well, maybe my face is showing, but it doesn't show for me.
No, I'm seeing the JL for a split second, and then it goes to your screen.
Strange. Anyway, there's been a lot of things that I've encountered in nature through my life that I always wanted to know more about, but I always put it on the same level as something like algebra, for example, something that really escapes me. And despite wanting to know about algebra, it's just hard to understand for me. It's just not something that I have a lot of skills in. And every time I've tried to gain skills in it, I either get frustrated or get lost or something else comes up. So anyway, astronomy is one of those things too. It seems like throughout my life, there's been lots of moments where I was like, I really want to know more about what I'm looking at when I look up in the sky. And for whatever reason, it just never took on my focus or got my attention in the same way that other things did. And finally, with this recent hiking that I've been doing, astronomy has really gotten high on my list of things that I wanted to know more about. And so I downloaded a couple of apps, downloaded apps that I've known about for a long time that I hadn't really used for this purpose, but like sky maps.
Mm-hmm.
And just have fallen in love with memorizing constellations and understanding where the planets are in the sky, and really understanding the cycle of the moon and following the cycle of the moon, and like noting in my calendar when it's at its apex in the sky so that it's easy to see even if you're around a lot of trees. So that's what I'm excited about right now, is astronomy and plants and plant identification and a whole bunch of things that I've waited a long time. I mean, my beard is gray. I've waited a long time to try to understand these things, and I feel like finally I'm getting just a little bit of a foothold on that. So that's what I'm excited about.
Yeah, astronomy's been always been a thing that I gravitated to. I was always like the earliest like books, the nonfiction books that I read were, like about space and, rockets, not childish things either. It was like history things about historical books about, the space race and all that. And, I think that went into my love of weather as well. The storms, hurricanes always fascinated me.
Yeah. Well,
tornadoes.
You had just posted, as you often do, a picture of a radar image, and given that we're talking about what is art next.
Yes, you mentioned it looked like art.
I mentioned that it looked like art because well, we'll talk about why, but
right.
You were going to talk about AI and art.
Yeah, so it was kind of interesting that came up because let me get this art. I just came across this article on CNN. Actually, I don't even know how I don't really visit CNN all that often. I guess it was just in a news feed or whatever, my Twitter feed. It might have been Mastodon at this point. Oh, I can't find my cursor. Oh boy, it's getting late. So am I sharing? Yeah. Okay. So yeah, it was and by the way, yeah, it's this has been called now. I won't talk about it, but we'll just note that it's there. So yeah, is AI art? Or is AI art really? Oh, that's such a bad headline. But I guess not. It just should be AI produced art or something. Is AI art really art? This California gallery says yes, and so they had an exhibit of. I think they used Midjourney for this mostly. I'm trying to. Oh no, it's focused on DALL-E. Created by OpenAI. It basically uses text prompts from a user to, create a finished product, create some kind of artwork based on those prompts. And
well, you're saying artwork, but that's really the question.
Right. Well, yeah. So visual product, I guess.
It's making an image.
Yes, it makes an image based on these prompts, and to me, this is, if the exhibit is focusing on these, then I don't have an issue with it being considered art. The issue is judging it is where I have, I mean, and you can say there's a far, deeper issue with judging art, but um, you know, to me, I would describe it as art. I don't know about not with any high artistic value to me, but I just, to me, I see it as art. I just don't see it as, you know, how it can be judged, when it's just using text prompts. It's not any, there's no skill involved in the actual
So
creation
you
part of it.
use an interesting word there, skill, because skill could be a part of your definition of what art requires. And if you do that, then you say, what kind of skill? And you start to ask the question of where did these skills emerge from? How come? And the other thing is, if you took an image that was created from AI and an image that had been created by a human, and you put them both in front of somebody who does not know the origin story of either piece, they're going to be judged with equality. In the same way that if AI made a photograph or AI made a sculpture or AI made a whatever, and all those things can happen. We're very close now to mass peoples being able to go into an AI engine and create imagery. But imagine if it's attached to a 3D printer, or imagine if it's attached to whatever, some kind of robot that sculpts stone. It really doesn't matter how something came to be. It's usually assessed because of the nature of it, the way that it looks, the way that it feels, the height of it, the size of it, not necessarily what the origin is. If you find out more about an artist, like if you start to learn about Picasso, and for instance, I went to art school and had an entire class just on Picasso, his life, his work, his everything, and it was such an amazing opportunity to learn about a name that is almost synonymous with modernism, because I didn't know that very much about him until that class, and now I know more than I could possibly want to know about his symbolism and his relationships he had with people, and just a lot of stuff. That makes looking at Picasso's art more interesting for me, because I can connect the dots with things that happened in his life, or where he was in his career, or where it belongs in his portfolio, or like whether it was in his blue period or his pink period, or his where he's focusing on women. I can't do that with Dali. I can do it with Salvador Dali. I can't do it with Dalle.
Yeah.
Because most of the information about how that machine came to create the imagery that it does is hidden. It's not publicly available knowledge. It's an algorithm, and the algorithm takes a text prompt and interprets it as the meaning that it interprets, and then displays that meaning. Right? Is that different than what a human artist does? You could certainly find an artist that works that way. Or you could, as I believe I've mentioned to you before, I had a project in college where myself and a partner who she was a painter and I was a sculptor, and we hadn't really worked together before, but because of a group project, we were being asked to make a piece together over a period of like 4 weeks or something. And we developed this system where we use chaos, where we use dice and objects with numbers and methods with numbers and letters, all kinds of things, and introduced that random chaos into our creation process so that we were not as responsible for what was happening in the resulting piece, but rather the universe was, if you take it all the way to that. There's a lot of randomness that's going on in Dolly. I'm sure of it. A lot of parts of that algorithm that say, and throw in a little bit of chaos here, right? Instead of making it what we were going to, make it a little bit different in this way, just as a tweak, almost like a glitch stomp pedal for your guitar, to throw it off a little bit.
Right.
My argument is that the designer of the algorithm, or the team of people who developed the algorithm, or the people who helped to test the algorithm, are the artists and humans by their right. And their creativity is being shown in that work. That's sort of like the concept of open source itself. Is like you're always building on the shoulders of giants. As something becomes more popular and becomes available, and because it's open source, anybody can use it for whatever purpose, and it often becomes repurposed in interesting and useful ways. The same is true of these AI engines. At some point, somebody's going to buy somebody else out, and those two algorithms will be combined in order to make a super AI that does super imagery or whatever, or sculpture, or any of the other things we've talked, ceramics, right? Is it art at the end? It depends on what you think art is. Art is not a definable, certainly not easily definable thing. It's not a concept. It's a pretty abstract concept. Yeah. It's not like saying, a bucket of ice or can of gasoline or rubber tire. All things that you can immediately, you're like, oh, yes, that. And the image that I see and the image you see when we say those things are probably very similar. They could be wildly different in the sense of details, like your bucket of ice could have a blue bucket and my bucket of ice could have red or whatever. But in the case of art, it's, when I say art and you get a picture in your head, it's not the same picture as mine. It's just not. If I say love, the same is true. Love doesn't mean the same thing between two people, no matter how much they say that it does. It's defined differently for each individual, and the more abstract, the more that's true. But man, if you tell me to define what I think is art, I could list a whole bunch of things, because I have great exemplars of art, none of whom are AI. I've been astounded and astonished by some of the things I've seen from some of these AI engines. I wouldn't want any of it up on my wall.
No.
That's part of it, is like, what is the visual and aesthetic and spiritual value of the object that it created? Does it have lasting value? Is it human? That's a really funny question, but is it human? Is the experience that I have as a result of experiencing the art that you've made, is it a human experience? Is it something that gives me fear or joy or makes me cry or makes me lose my breath or makes me ponder? Does it do any of those things? I haven't been moved in that way by anything that I've seen by Dolly. That could be a fault of the algorithm writers, the programmers. It could be a fault of the text prompts. It could be a fault of the fact that right now AI art generation, quote unquote, is really like a million monkeys typing, looking for Shakespeare.
All right. Well, it's actually funny though. You mentioned about would you want it on your walls, or does it evoke any feelings? What's interesting though is that Eric McCune, which I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his last name right because I forgot how it was pronounced. Do you remember the Mustache Rangers from our old days? Remember I used that podcast I used to listen to? They actually came back for like 2 episodes, and they said they're going to have like a whole bunch of new episodes. They did too, and I think that was it. Just this year they came back.
Hmm.
But he's done. He's had like a Twitter thread of these Mid-Journey images that he's produced, through these, and they're used, and of course, knowing them, they're absurd prompts, right? Um, I can't think of one, but they're just weird. They're weird, and he puts them all in a Twitter thread. And what's funny is that the AI has been upgraded recently, so he did the same ones again, and they're vastly different pictures. So it's like even the skill of presenting the prompts, even that act is rendered completely different by, and it's like you said, like your AI and my AI will produce different images, and you and I will produce different images based on the same idea. So, but it's entertaining to me when I look at it. I don't, it's not emotional, but it's just funny and entertaining seeing these images he's produced through Midjourney. So I guess
Well,
in that way, there's some kind of value to me, which I wasn't really thinking about until a few minutes ago. But
there's great value to people who have a blog post who they need an image for. There's great value to people who need to quickly illustrate an idea if it becomes less fantasy and more realistic. If I said as a prompt, uh, draw a diagrammatic display of a African violet, and if it was able to make like a surgically tight drawing of an African violet, that's a success. I've illustrated something that I particularly wanted that didn't exist necessarily before, based on the ability of this tool that can do things that I can't do. On the other hand, one concern that I think has popped up a lot around this, because these images are astounding and interesting, is, does this mean that artists are dead? Or does this mean the death of creativity? Because if you can just put in a text prompt and have something spit out that is better than anything you ever could have come up with, but still not human, does that mean that art still needs to continue? And it's answered loudly by makers everywhere who don't do art for money, who don't do art because anybody's asking them to, that don't do art because it necessarily makes them feel good, but do art because they're compelled to. That's certainly, I've had moments in my life where that's been the case. It doesn't happen very often these days, but I do make art and just set up a drafting table that I've been working on a piece for. I'm not worried about Dolly. Dolly can't do what I do, and I don't mean that to brag. I'm just saying it's incapable of the work that myself and many other people make. Because if all we're talking about is a digital display of images, many people would say that's a non-starter as art anyway. It's not on canvas. It's not, nobody bled over it. It's not, nobody threw paint at it. There's a whole bunch of things that many artists require as what they think is art, and it doesn't involve a screen. You know what I mean?
yeah.
So,
but then I go back to the art all night definition of art, which was almost anything. It's like, so
I didn't see any screens that day. You know what I mean? Like
right.
somebody might have printed out something
Yes, that's what
from.
I'm saying. If they printed something out and displayed it, I mean,
That's happening now, and that's very controversial. I don't see it as very controversial, because if somebody used Illustrator, there's so many bells and whistles in Illustrator that can make your image something that you could never do yourself.
right, right.
Inkscape's not that. It has some plugins and things, but it's not really, it's still a human tool. And so I feel better about Inkscape. Feel better about Inkscape for a lot of reasons. But I don't necessarily think that the design work that I've done in Inkscape is necessarily art. I might regard it in the same way as far as whether something's precious to me or not, if it's printed out or if I see it on screen. But it's a lot different if I walk into my kitchen and there is a 5 foot by 3 foot canvas that has, paint that was dripped on it and things glued to it and threads sewn through it. It's Dolly's not going to make that. Dolly's just not capable at this point. But like I said, you could make accoutrement to the Dolly system and turn it into something with 8 arms that can whip up a whatever in 12.7 seconds. But that's not very human either. It's like the McDonald'sification of what word would you use there? McDonald'ification?
Yeah.
Yeah. But you see where I'm getting. It's if a machine is doing it better than a human could, you might as well call it industrialism. It's not necessarily art anymore. It's if you looked at the Ford's assembly line, there was an artistic nature to that, but none of those workers necessarily was the artist.
Right.
If anybody, it was Ford. The same is true here. It's even though it's producing an apparently skilled object or skills required object, the skills required are all ahead of the object itself. It's not, Dolly's not going to go in for a second take on it. They're not going to think about it for a couple days and then render a new version of it. There's just a lot of humanity that's missing from that process. And so less and less like art, I think.
Yeah. I agree. I think for the most part, I think maybe in certain contexts, maybe you can get away with it, but yeah, I agree. I think it maybe needs a new term. I have no idea, but
well, I mean, AI's been making music for a lot longer, right?
Right.
What happened there? Has AI ever made a top 50 hit?
I don't know. Possibly. We just don't know about it.
I'll tell you, I doubt that they would reveal that if it was true.
Yeah, and considering that most top 10 hits have like 20 co-writers.
Regardless, top 50. I'm saying, where did Dolly break through to the pop charts?
Yeah, right. All right. Yeah. No, I can see that point. I can see it. But
and I don't hate it. I want to be very, very clear. I think it's neat. I've tried to make some interesting things with it. It's not really my thing.
Yeah.
Because I think that I going in as a visual thinker already have an idea of what I want and know how I would do it. So, yeah, that was happening before. I know how I would do it. Or sometimes I don't know how I would do it, but I have an idea of how I'd get through to it. Right. And that's often the way I work, is like not really knowing all the answers. But if I wrote down the idea and had somebody else make it for me, it's never going to be satisfying to me.
Right.
Because it's not the thing that I wanted to make.
Right. Exactly. Yep.
Does that going to stop people from filling up the Getty Museum with them? No, there's going to be plenty of those, and it will win awards and it will fool people and it will be featured in films and they'll be the first film ever made completely by AI that gets an Oscar and whatever.
By James Cameron.
No, by AI, and at that point, maybe
presented by James Cameron.
Maybe somebody will have given the AI its own identity by that point so that it can like free it to live its life. And, whatever, the AI will live in a box on Hollywood Hills next to the Oscar.
Scorsese bot 3,000.
Yeah, it's like even in the best version of the story, it's not very happy. It's like, what are we doing?
Actually,
if that's the final result, like
that's actually I don't know, spoiler, but the finale of She-Hulk on Disney Plus.
Oh, really?
It's hilarious because She-Hulk as a comic book character broke the fourth wall. She did it before Deadpool, and in the comics. But so yeah, spoiler if you're gonna watch it. But so she's not happy with the way the finale's going. It's become this like brawl with the Hulk showing up out of nowhere and Abomination, and then there's this other character, this guy who is like trolling her the whole time. He gets Hulk powers, and they're fighting, and she's like, "No, this is a mess." It's like I don't want this finale to be like this. So she like stops or I guess the whole thing is, it looks like somebody stops the show, the episode, and she like breaks out of the Disney Plus menu, like so all the options, and so she sees a thumbnail for Marvel Assemble, which is like behind the scenes stuff, and she's like, "Oh, that'll do." And so she climbs down into that, comes into the real world, and goes to the She-Hulk writers' room, and she's like, "Who thought of this? What?" It's like, "Well, this is what Kevin wanted. This is what you're thinking, Kevin Feige." And it's like Kevin says, Kevin, the head of Marvel Studios, and
I did not know that.
This is what Kevin wants. It's like, well, I'm going to go talk to Kevin. It's like, oh, nobody talks to Kevin. So they go in there, and have you ever seen Kevin Feige? Baseball hat.
I want to preface the rest of your story by saying I've never watched. I've watched like Iron Man. I think one movie. I couldn't tell you another scene except for the one where he builds the first Iron Man out of like stones on the ground. But so I don't really know that much about the Marvel universe, and I don't really care to learn. I just have other things I want to learn about the stars. I don't really care about Thor and what's his name with the rings?
Shang-Chi.
No, the guy with the colorful rings. He controls the universe.
Oh, rings. So no, those are gems. That's Thanos.
Oh, yeah, that guy. I don't know anything about him.
Okay, so anyway, she goes into the main headquarters, and she goes to talk to Kevin, and it's not Kevin Feige. It's an AI with Kevin Feige's patented baseball hat, like as a visor, like it's over the lens. It's like a camera. It looks like an old camera, and it's like going around the room, like it's on one of these, like going.
Do you have a timpani there?
No.
It sounds like you have a timpani there.
No, I don't have a timpani.
Timpani.
No, I have.
No, hit your microphone stand again.
No, it's just it's just shaking. That's all.
You ought to hear it when you hear it in the recording.
Okay.
You'll realize that's what you should use for a timpani.
Okay. Well, whatever. But anyway, yeah. So it turns out it's an AI and has well, that's what the formula says everybody wants. And she basically sits down and like has a chat and it's like, no, get rid of that, get rid of that. It's kind of mocking the whole Marvel formula, and it was pretty funny. It was very, very good. But
this is I think a good way to close this conversation.
Yes, it is.
What I was going to say was,
because I don't like the way this is going either.
All I'm going to say is I revealed to you that I don't know that much about the Marvel universe, and you obviously do, and that's a lot like what art is like too. There's a certain things that can happen in art, in art with a capital A, right? If you go to a museum, you're seeing art there. You don't have a question really about whether it's art. You just assume that somebody on the board there decided that this piece that you're looking at, that's art, right? There was the Virginia Museum of Fine Arts was filled with guitars. Some people would say, is that art? I would say no question, but
Yeah.
it's the way that the work was presented and the way that you were informed and the overarching humanity that was present in not only images, but the ideas and the sounds and everything about it was great. Called Storied Strings. If you ever get if you're in the greater Washington, D.C. area, please take the time, go to Richmond, check the show out while it's still here, probably for another couple months. My point is, I don't know anything about Marvel, and you do. And as a result, you have a sense of the history and the culture and the rules and the things that have happened before and why, when a change occurred in the story, it was significant. The same is true of art. In other words, all the way from the caves. But even if you just stop at like modernism, which is, as I said, Picasso, 1910 through about 1970 is modernism. There are rules and cultures and standouts and exemplars and clear clear and easily identifiable icons of modernist art that define what modernism is, right? So you can take something that is either from sometime much earlier and something that sort of reveals its early age and take it into modernism and say, no, that doesn't really fit. It's not in the same vein and therefore not modernist art. But you only know that if you know something about modernism. You only know that if you know something about Marvel. And as a result, the people who know it get to define it more reasonably than somebody who is not involved. If you asked me my opinion on what to do with Marvel Comics, I wouldn't be able to tell you the first thing. I wouldn't be able to give you a storyline or tell you what I like about what already exists there, or wouldn't it be interesting if this happened and that happened? I will say I did watch What If, and not knowing any of the characters or any of what they are supposed to be and only seeing this animated version of it, I feel like I have some sense of the Marvel Universe and found that show to be very entertaining, even though I didn't really know who people were or why they were doing these things to each other or why they hated each other or whatever. And I'm sure when you watched it, if you watched it, you were like, wow, they really twisted the game with that particular pairing of people and the thing that happened or whatever. We can say the same thing in the art world, right? If you look at Jasper Johns or Mark Rothko or Bruce Nauman, three of my absolute favorite artists, they're all borrowing from each other. They're contemporaries. They're defining the language amongst all of them. Well, not Rothko. Rothko's been dead for a while, but those artists and many others are all influenced by what's going on and being defined as art. So you might find an artist, for example, who decides to use DALL-E, as we saw in that story, the original story that you had shared, using DALL-E in order to create portions of an image and then possibly recreating it in like acrylic as opposed to just printing it out and putting it on a wall. There's a lot of legitimacy to that. That's very interesting because there's lots of tools that you can use in making art that do work for you. A spirograph, for example, if you want that particular kind of line, you can just put a spirograph down on paper and make a spirograph shape on there with it. It would be very difficult to do that without the tool. And the same is probably true of a lot of AI tools where, as I said, if you go into Illustrator, you can immediately, click a button and have things happen with your relatively simple design that would take, hours to do otherwise. But because it has this AI, or in that case, probably just an algorithm, in order to modify the lines and do certain things with them, Did the designer stop being a designer when they clicked the button? That's arguable. I think you'd be hard to find somebody who said, no, the designer's anything but, no, the designer is still the designer, because it's a tool that's being used, just like a pencil, just like a triangle, just like a protractor, whatever the case might be. So can AI make art? In a relative manner of speaking, I guess. I suppose I'd like to see when it wins the first Oscar, or, sells its first painting for $650 million. Not that that's any legitimate indicator of what art is, but certainly an indicator of what's valuable to people.
Well, I mean, clearly the question isn't going to go away, and it's going to continue. The technology isn't going anywhere, so it's an interesting thing to ponder. So
Yeah.
I just saw that, and I knew this show was coming up, so ready to go swing big with that one. Very philosophical conclusion to our reunion episode. So,
on that note,
yes.
Let's wrap up this reunion show. You want to do it in sync? It's been great hanging out with you, John, and talking about technology and art. We should probably do it again before another 8 years goes by, for sure. I agree.
And now you know why 8 years went by.
Well, that and the free Budweiser nights. That was another reason we had to stop.
Oh, I'm trying to remember where that was.
That was in
Where was that?
It was in Center City, Philly.
It was
maybe
in Philly,
West Philly.
Where?
It was near Center City.
It wasn't West Philly. It was what was it? Old City? Was it at Triumph?
I thought it was. No, it was not at Triumph. I thought that it
isn't there anymore.
I thought it was a little west of City Hall, but I'm not really sure. As you remember, you were the designated driver, and I was drinking as many of those free beers as I could. There's the timpani again. It sounds great.
Sorry,
man. You must have been practicing.
No, I just don't remember where that was.
I'm sure that we have a record of it somewhere.
Oh yeah, we must. We did an episode
in the podcast itself. I'm sure we mentioned exactly where we're at.
We interviewed people. Yeah, I'll find out where that was. So yeah, we're this reunion episode is complete, and I don't know, maybe we'll get together again sooner rather than later.
Well, now that our kids are both growing a little bit, maybe there'll be more time to do this, every once in a while.
Yeah. I mean, we had to put like 8 years worth of content to catch up. I mean, if we just did this every now and then and only had a couple of topics to talk about, if we just picked
we'd be through in like 15 minutes.
Yeah, if we just picked like one topic to talk about, we could do. I was thinking about that when we said, I did it again. We might not have the time.
Well, depending on your edits, this may be a 15-minute episode. We're not really sure yet.
No, I'm letting this one fly. People are gonna have to sit through it. We had to sit through it. Everybody's gonna have to sit through it.
Oh man!
All 1 hour 44 minutes of it.
I think that we should do dueling edits. I think that we should do 2 different cuts. That would be our collaborative effort. 2 dueling edits.
I'm not cutting anything.
Oh man, it's gonna be great. It's gonna be great.
I'm not cutting anything. It's gonna
all right,
all
brother.
Be there.
I'm going to get off the phone. You're going to stop the recording, and I will talk to you soon in the future.
Take care.
Bye. Thanks.